Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Medic Hour. I'm your host for the evening, Rabina Mia. Today's topic is about eczema, a topic that affects many of you in the community. And I know from lots of people I've been speaking to how much it can be a major thing that can take over your lives, especially if you've got children and babies who are struggling to come to terms with it as well as having to deal with it. So hopefully lots of your questions today will be answered in relation to not only what eczema is, but how to look after yourselves. And my guest in the hot seat today is Dr. Preeta Biani. Lovely to have you here, Preeta.
Thank you for having me.
No, it's I really appreciate you coming. You're a GP in Leeds.
Yes.
And you've been qualified now for 5 years, but a GP for a year.
Yeah.
So you must see lots of people with eczema.
Yeah, it's a very common condition, as you've already mentioned, and it affects so many different age groups in different forms that it's something that we see day in, day out.
Yeah. So what is eczema then? We know it in terms of these rashes that children have or adults have. Is that all it is, or is it something else going on there?
Yeah, so it's some people can get rashes. It's basically what we term with eczema is, some people may call it dermatitis as well. Okay. It's basically inflammation or sort of the skin reacting, and this can be two different things, and it can cause the skin to become quite dry and susceptible to infections as well. So that's why, what I would describe as eczema.
So is eczema always on the surface, or is eczema, because I'm assuming because our skin is produced from inside, that it's something going wrong at a cellular level?
It's more on the surface. They suggest that it's missing sort of the oily layer in the skin, so that you've got less moisture, so it makes the skin more dry, and that's why you then get the dry, irritable sort of skin.
Yeah, and obviously why you want to scratch it as well. I know we're going to talk about how to control that.
Yes.
And there's a term atopic eczema.
Yes.
What does that mean?
So there's lots of different types of eczema, and we could spend a lot of time going through every single one. There's different ones like where you're reacting to certain substances, so that would be what we'd call irritant eczema. But atopic eczema is where you yourself have an allergic sort of tendency, which is inbuilt into you. That can be passed through families, and it means you more readily react to certain things compared to someone else who's in that situation as well. And you might find those people who've got atopic eczema may later in life develop things like hay fever or asthma, or have family members who've got the same sort of conditions as well.
So in terms, you said sort of that you could have hay fever and other symptoms. Is there always a connection between the two?
There's a connection in the sense that they come under the term of the atopy, so allergic conditions.
Oh, I see.
And asthma, hay fever, eczema, they all come under that blanket term, and some people may have one, may not have the other, but we tend to see them as kind of a family. Okay.
And what would be the first symptoms of eczema that somebody might notice?
So a lot of people will notice that their skin becomes quite dry. And it's quite irritable, so like you said, the itching, they find it's quite itchy, and it can become quite red, so that when we think inflammation, we think red, hot, kind of irritable areas, and that can be whether it's inside the body for other conditions or in eczema on the skin. In babies particularly, we'll see it on their head or in their cheeks.
Yes, I've got a friend at the moment whose baby's suffering with this, and it's really on the cheeks, and then the baby's got it on the head, and of course as a baby they not only wanted to scratch, but they're moving their head to try and scratch, and it's really hard to control that, isn't it?
Yes, and you might also find that they've got it on their legs as well. But as people get older, you'll find that it tends to affect more the fronts of their elbows, their wrists, or the back of their knees.
So where the creases are?
Yeah, so that's the way it changes in the pattern of how it might present in different areas.
Okay, I know I'm going to come on and ask you a bit more about what we do to treat it, but when should you first aim to see a doctor? Because dry skin can just be dry skin. I mean, lots of us are busy, lots of us are, rushing in and out the shower. Not always, I can remember times when I used to be able to pamper myself. I don't have that kind of time anymore, and neither do lots of other people. So, how would you know it's not just normal dry skin, that you need to just put a bit of cream on and it's eczema?
So often in babies, and that's usually the first time when we start seeing people come in with eczema, mums have often just tried a little bit of creams that they've got, which they've been using, whether it's what they've been recommended through the midwife or the health visitor, and it's just not getting better. Similarly, in adults, they may have tried a bit of they bought some moisturisers and tried, and it's just like it's not getting better, and they want a bit more support. I would probably encourage people to come in sooner than later, because it could be that it's eczema, but it could also be something else. And having just one of your GP have a quick look at it might just give you a bit of reassurance. That's one thing.
Are you able to say what else it might be if it's not eczema?
Other things, sometimes fungal infections can be quite itchy, and they can look like small patches of affected areas, but to an experienced eye, it does look different from eczema to fungal infection. So it's just trying to get a diagnosis of what might be happening. The other thing is, in children, eczema can be a presentation of other conditions. So there's one which a lot of mums may have heard of, is cow's milk protein allergies. And
that's when they stop breastfeeding and introducing cow's milk?
Yes, it can occur in that, but some babies also present earlier on because mums are drinking cow's milk and then they're being breastfed and presented that way. So it can be a presentation of that, and they may have other symptoms. And what I would suggest is that the sooner you take your child in to get seen, the sooner we can firstly reassure you and guide you on the correct path of treatment as well.
So eczema obviously can be quite distressing, especially if it's with children. And you said very early on that it can start in children, and we know that. Can it start unexpectedly with an adult?
So yes, it can do. Typically, yes, we see eczema in infants, and then we tend to see by the mid-teens, most cases will resolve spontaneously. But it's not saying that people can't carry on with eczema lifelong, and they might find that a few years down the line they've not had anything and they suddenly have a flare-up. And it may be that there's certain things which trigger them, so pollen, dust mite, house dust mite, that might trigger that reaction. Where it suddenly comes up in an adult later on, and we have to think of other things. Is it a case of they've been washing their hands, for example, with a certain soap, and it's caused that irritation, and then it becomes more that irritant eczema and not kind of atopic eczema, but it still can present later on in life.
So would somebody prone to having eczema be likely to have more sensitivity to other products and have a sensitivity in their skin anyway? Is that sort of one of the symptoms that they might notice?
Yes, so they're more sensitive, and they may find that certain products which they can get, so bubble baths and soaps, might be more drying for their skin, and that actually makes their eczema worse. Or they might find that changes in temperature, so going suddenly from hot or cold. So this is, I don't suffer with eczema as such, but I know fully well in the winter my hands will go very dry, and that's something that they may notice, that change in temperature. Or, like I've said, certain irritants, so pollen, they might find that the cat next door, if the kids go over and play there, that triggers, the cat's hair triggers their eczema. So some people can work out what's their specific triggers, and it's working out how to cut it out and how to sort of manage that as well in their day-to-day life.
How long does it take to diagnose eczema?
Usually, if we have a very clear presentation, a diagnosis of eczema is a clinical diagnosis that you don't necessarily need to have lots of investigations or those sort of things. We tend to look at where the affected areas are, if there is any family history of any other sort of atopic conditions, as I've said, and usually the way it looks is very characteristic of what eczema may present as. Where there is that uncertainty, so sometimes fungal infections, like I've said, although they typically tend to present quite shiny compared to what eczema might look like, there is sometimes a bit of confusion. It may be because parents have tried a certain cream which has eased it, but we're not fully sure. We might, do a bit of a trial of treatment to just see what's working and what isn't working. But usually the diagnosis is fairly quick and doesn't need many complicated tests.
I think that's one of the worries. I know when I've spoken to people in the community about this topic, because I knew it was coming up and I've been chatting to people, and I think one of the things that often upsets people is the fact that they have to keep trying different things. There's no sort of one thing for everybody, is there? And is that because it's such an individual thing?
Yes.
It takes time to find the right thing.
And I think, yes, you're completely right. It's such an individual condition, and what might work for one person may cause a reaction in another person, and it goes back to that sensitivity of that skin as well. So we can't just, say, oh, this project A fits you, everyone else. Why doesn't it fit you, and make you suffer with that? No, we have to work out what works best for you, and that does involve trialling different treatments.
And I know we're going to talk about the different emollients and creams, so I know I'm going to explore that with you in terms of why would you start with some and before others, so I know that's going to come up. So what's the best and easiest way to start managing eczema then?
So the easiest thing to do is, well, after you've seen your GP and you've obviously got that diagnosis, is things you can do for yourself. And I think that's one of the big messages I want to send out after this talk, is there's a lot you can do for yourself, or parents can do for their children without needing other treatment or flaring up the eczema. Simple things, as I've said, bubble baths and soaps can often irritate the skin, so trying to stop using them, and we can give you soap substitutes, and that can be on prescription, but you can also buy it over the counter. So those are something that you can do yourself to try and prevent flare-ups. And
is that because they're less likely than other soaps to take out moisture from the skin? Is that the difference? Because these are medications, these are chemically based, aren't they? So, because that's the worry for a lot of people, is that they're not natural products, and they want to try, because I can think of people that, they'll use oils and they use coconut oil and things like that to try and combat these symptoms, but they also generate heat a lot of the time, which can be aggravating. So that's the worry, is that, if we tried these creamier soaps or creamier lotions without using medicated creams, are those worth, I guess what I'm trying to ask you is, are those worth trying?
With regards to things like coconut oil and sunflower, I know like the National Eczema Association has mentioned it on their website, but from a medical point of view, we base it on evidence-based medicine, and there's very limited or mixed evidence regarding whether it helps or not. And of course, there's a lot of anecdotal evidence where people have found it's helped, and I think I can't really advise whether, from a medical point of view, whether it's worth using them or not and trying them, but I know people do and may find it beneficial.
I think people often do that before they'll come to a doctor. They try and treat it at home,
exactly.
Don't they? Yeah, okay.
So, and I think if you're reaching that point where you have tried things at home, I think it's worth giving us a little bit of a chance.
No, absolutely, I'm not saying that they shouldn't come to you. I'm just, I guess I'm trying to say is other things, and sometimes it's cheaper to do things at home, isn't it? With and it's less time consuming, it's less experimental, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, then that's when we do come to see the doctor. So you've talked about prescribing creams and things. What's the big difference between the different creams that people are prescribed? Why does some work for some and not others? Yeah,
so we have a huge kind of range of creams, lotions, moisturisers, that we can prescribe. So the big term is emollients, and you'll hear your GP use that term. It's basically moisturisers.
Okay.
And there's different types. You can have lotions, creams, and ointments.
What's the difference between the three?
So they go from being less greasy to more greasy. So lotions tend to be less greasy compared to what ointments would be. And within them, there's many different companies which provide the emollients, and one can suit one person and not the other person, just because it causes a bit of a reaction. So just because one cream's not working for you, it doesn't mean there's not another option, or there's not another one that you can try.
So it's really important that people come back and mention it to you.
Exactly.
How much time would you expect somebody to try it before they say it's not working?
I would generally tend to say 3 to 4 weeks is what I'd like to see people back in, because it gives you a fair enough amount of time to try it and see whether it's working or not. Because if you were using a cream prior to that, it may be that you've still got a bit of damage from that previous one, or so we need to have that little bit of overlap firstly, then a period to try it and then review it. So I would definitely say we need to give it about 3 to 4 weeks before we just kind of say
every day.
So with emollients, you need to be using it 3 to 4 times a day easily. because it's important to keep that moisture back into your skin, and that's what emollients do. They restore that sort of moisture and keep your skin sort of soft and supple, and it avoids it from drying out.
And you'd only use it on the areas where you've got the eczema, because you're coming out of a bath and shower, your whole body needs moisturising, so you can use it everywhere.
You can use it everywhere, and we encourage you to use it everywhere, because just because one area is affected doesn't mean another area couldn't get affected. And that's why, for example, the soap substitutes that I was mentioning, by putting it into your bath, you're already having a moisturising bath or shower. So you've already got that initial layer. And yes, I'd encourage people, once they've dried their skin after having a shower or a bath, putting the cream on, and then trying to use it on 3 to 4 times a day. So I know some people ask the GPs for a smaller pot so they can take it to work, or you know, they try and send it to nursery if the nursery's happy to try and apply it. But it's important to keep that going, because that's what's going to prevent your eczema getting worse. And then within the emollients, there's also different ones where some have a bit of what we call antimicrobial, so they fight infections to an extent as well. Some have a bit of menthol, so they can be a bit cooling. Some can be have a bit of an anti-itch component as well.
That sounds important.
Exactly.
Why would they put that in everyone?
So it's just worth, you know, if one isn't working, one might, you know, we can try a different one, or you could use one for certain situations over a different situation.
You were talking about lotions being less greasy.
Yes.
What about the ointment and, you said, did you say creams, ointments and lotions?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've talked about lotions. What's the difference between a lotion and a cream and an ointment?
So, like I said, so lotions are the less greasiest, and then the ointments are the more greasy ones. So that would be the ones where it's got maybe more paraffin in, for example. And they tend to be more effective than lotions in trying to reduce that flare-up or the inflammation of the skin. But some people find it quite greasy and may not necessarily want to use it every day or all the time, while lotions are less greasy, but you need to apply it more often then, because it's not as effective in that respect.
You said ointments are most greasy and they contain more paraffin in them. The paraffin to me doesn't sound like a safe product. Are they safe?
So yes, some of the ointments have more paraffin in, but others may have different ingredients in, which is more. So, like I said, there's lots of different ones. Paraffin, yes, it is safe, but there is a warning which is out there at the moment, and a lot of fire companies and fire departments have been mentioning it, is that if you are using paraffin-based lotions, ointments or creams, you need to make sure you're not near open fires and you're not smoking. That's very important to remember, because it is still flammable.
That's really serious though.
Yeah. And I think that's something people don't realise, and it's important to remember that.
Okay, yeah, that sounds really quite serious. Okay, but we can't have these without paraffin in them?
There are other ones which don't have paraffin, but just because there's that warning, I wouldn't deter people from not using it. It's just an advice to make sure that if you are using, you stay away from open fires, or if you smoke, then you need to make sure you're not smoking when you've just applied the cream.
So if somebody's getting a prescription for the first time, would the GP be mentioning that, or is that something they'd have to look at themselves, or who's going to tell them that there's paraffin in this? Is it just a case of looking at the ingredients?
Ideally, the GP should be mentioning it. Most of our systems in general practice do have a little icon if someone's a smoker, for example. But I think as GPs, we should be asking, does anyone smoke, or giving them a warning that this does contain paraffin, so just be aware there is this risk. But the pharmacist may also mention it.
Especially if you've got children or babies that you're putting it on, you need to know, don't you? Yeah, okay. All right. But there must be some benefit to having the paraffin in there. And is it because it creates a barrier of some sort? Yeah,
it's the same as with all the other ones, like I've said. It's trying to retain that moisture back into the skin and trying to prevent that sort of flare-up from occurring, or keeping the skin under control to prevent worsening eczema. So it's just making sure that it's nice and moist.
So apart from emollients, what else might you prescribe to somebody that's dealing with eczema, either for themselves or their children?
So other things that we might prescribe, if we know there's a particular trigger to your eczema, so if we know that kids, if they go into the grass, it's going to trigger that, it might be worth knowing, right, they're going on a day trip, I know that's going to make it worse. You can give them a bit of antihistamines. That's something that they could have, or if they know they're going to go to grandma's and grandma's got a cat and that's what makes it worse.
Yeah, I've got a cat and I know that when one of my grandsons comes that he always has to take an antihistamine. What I don't know is what are antihistamines? I always relate them to hay fever myself, you know, that's what I associate them with, and they usually come in packets for hay fever sufferers. But what is an antihistamine? How does it work?
So when in any allergic reaction, your body produces histamines to react to it. Okay. So for example, if you have an insect bite, or if the worst case scenario is someone who's allergic to peanuts, for example, and they get that sort of reaction where their throat's swelling, or they're getting swelling of the skin and they're itching. And that's because you're producing chemicals inside your body.
Naturally.
Which are histamines, which causes the reaction to occur, and your body starts fighting it.
Because it's rejecting something.
Yeah, and what an antihistamine's kind of doing is dampening that response. That sort of, we need to fight this allergic response. It's just dampening it, and that's the same in hay fever, where you might be reacting to pollen. It's dampening that body's natural response to fighting that, what normally would be fine for most people, but to that person, that's what triggers that reaction to occur.
So they get irritated, their insides or their skin gets irritated because of the cat hairs or the pollen or whatever, and this is what helps to control that irritation to it. Is that right?
Yeah.
Am I understanding this correctly?
So it's whether it's the skin which is affected, or in some people like with hay fever, or they might find that if they're near a cat they get a runny nose. So it doesn't necessarily need to be the skin, but there'll be different people will have that the reaction. They might find they have a cough. So it's dampening that sort of allergic reaction within the body, and that's the same thing it would do in eczema as well. It's dampening that response. So if you know there's one thing that particularly triggers it, parents can use antihistamines, or adults, and make that just helps with the eczema one way.
And I guess that's something also that you discuss with your doctor if you're having other symptoms around things. I'm particularly concerned about how we support parents with children with eczema, especially with babies and children that are not old enough to understand how to sort of respond to what's happening to them in a way that would be helpful to them. So what can parents do to support their child with eczema? Because we keep saying don't scratch, but actually any of us who've ever had something that's itching, we know we shouldn't be scratching it, but you do. It's so hard not to. How do we encourage parents to support their children in that situation?
I completely agree, and it is difficult. Even myself, when I've got an insect bite, the natural reaction is to scratch.
And I sort of go around it instead of on it, but you really want to go, we really want to scratch that.
So like you said, one of the things is trying to rub around it, so rubbing instead of the scratch, so trying to encourage them to do that. Keeping the nails short. In children and in adults as well, that's important as well, for many reasons, because the scratching can cause your skin to become quite thick, and that can cause sort of the scarring and the discoloration of the skin as well, where it becomes thickened, and that can make children and adults quite conscious of their skin as well.
The appearance changes.
Exactly.
And is that a permanent change?
Yes, so that's one thing. So trying to keep your nails short, and also it reduces the risk. If you can imagine, if you're scratching, you can break the skin barrier, so it introduces infection. So keeping your nails nice and short. When you are putting the emollients on, making sure you're sort of brushing it along the hairline, the growth pattern, rather than against it, because it stops it getting clumpy, and it also stops it blocking the hair follicles. So then that reduces infection.
That reminds me of how you varnish wood. You do it in the direction of the grain. So we're putting on creams for eczema in the same direction as the hair growth. That's a really important tip, isn't it?
So you can do that. And also another thing that can work quite well is when you do put the emollients on, you could put a little bit in the fridge and then when you do put it on, it's quite cool.
So it's cool.
Yeah, and there are some which contain, like I've said before, contain menthol. So again, it's quite cooling when you do apply it to your skin.
Do these, I mean, I know we're coming to the break in the next minute or so I don't want to make a long question out of this, but if somebody's been scratching and they've got raw, open skin, are those creams going to sting?
Yeah, it is likely that it will cause stinging, particularly the ones which have got other ingredients like the menthol and things. And if they are scratching to the point that it is raw, they really need to see a GP, because it might be they need, I know we're going to come on to this later, but they may need steroid creams at that stage.
Okay, I know we're going to talk about that, and I know we need to sort of cover the part that by scratching we're opening the skin, we're creating open environments for infections, aren't we? And that then makes things a lot worse.
Yes.
So it is about how can we help our children as well as ourselves to prevent that stage of where the skin starts to break open, because we can't, you know, it's itching too much. But I think that tip about putting your cream in the fridge is a really good one.
Yeah, it's just worth checking with the pharmacist which ones would be okay in the fridge, because they all, like I said, have different ingredients, but just worth checking with them. And another thing, simple thing, cotton clothing or smooth sort of clothing. Wool is very irritating for the skin.
Well, it generates heat, doesn't it? Yeah.
That, and also I think it's the fibres and the roughness of that fabric also irritates the skin. So it's just babies, children, I would try and stick to cotton clothing as much as possible.
I'm going to come back to continue that part of the conversation after the break, because we've now come to the break time. So inshallah, please come back after the break and listen to the rest of the conversation on eczema today. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.